Hello, welcome back again. I am so excited for the second part in our series with Colleen. And if you missed our last episode, please be sure to check it out. We talked all about birth and labor doulas, episode 57. Today, we are going to talk about postpartum doulas. So we are just going to jump right into it. Colleen, for anyone who hasn't heard this term before, what can you tell us a little bit more about what that means? What is a postpartum doula? What would they do?
Right. So postpartum doula supports the family, not just the baby, to the degree that the family wants and needs that, right? We're not there just to take care of the baby, although that's a big part of what we do. We're there to help the family learn about how to care for their baby, soothe their baby. We do feeding support depending on if that's needed. We'll also cook if needed, tidy up the kitchen, wash pump parts, wash bottles, fold laundry, kind of those light things that help folks feel like, okay, my life is chaotic right now and upside down, but at least my household is still running. Right. But that really takes a backseat to helping them get to know their baby, get comfortable with parenting, and also maybe even, take baby while the parents rest or sleep or meditate or take a shower. It really depends on what each family needs. So it's broadly defined in that way, based on each family's situation and what kind of additional support they have, if any. And our goal is to work ourselves out of a job. This is not a long-term thing. It's about spending a few hours at a time with the family, and eventually they're feeling like, oh, I still don't have all the answers, but I got this. I think I'm going to be okay. Or maybe they're transitioning to a nanny or daycare or whatever. Once a parent says, you know what, I think we're going to be okay. I feel like I've done my job. We're done here. Great. You know how to reach me if you need some more help. Yeah.
So what would the benefits be of hiring a postpartum doula versus having like a family friend or a family member, come over?
Right. Well, postpartum doulas have a lot of specific training in helping to soothe babies. And we don't have an agenda other than to be supportive and meet the family wherever they're at. Whether, doesn't matter how they're feeding their baby, doesn't matter whether they're sleeping with their baby or not. We don't function in any way other than to support whatever they're doing. And if they're not sure if it's working for them, helping them figure out what their goals are and helping them work toward that. Family members can have an emotional connection where this is the way I did it, you need to do it this way. Or, just let me hold the baby, right? That may not be what the birthing person needs, is someone else to hold their infant, right? And patients can be thin with family members. That emotional baggage can create stress. And so our job is, I heard someone say, the mama without the drama. Right. So, we come in, we do our job, we are compassionate and supportive, and then we leave. And, we don't create any sense of guilt or judgment, or at least we can't always control if that happens with a client, but, we are an objective means of support.
Yes, I think that's amazing. So I would say that one of my passions is banishing the bounce back culture, right? I mean, our society tells us that we go through, birth, we have this baby, and then within 6 weeks, we're supposed to, all with a smile on our face, get back into our pre-pregnancy pants and get back to work and get back to sex and, woohoo, everything's fine. And like, not even act like it's hard. So if someone doesn't have access to a postpartum doula, say they're just, they're in a small town and there isn't anyone skilled like that around, what advice can you share with our listeners that, ways that they could prepare for that fourth trimester?
That's a great question. The first thing I would say is have a conversation with your partner, if you have one, about who in the family and friends realm will be truly helpful and who will create stress.
Mm.
And be a united front together on that, and set expectations ahead of time, determine who you want to have around, right? And setting boundaries, right? My daughter, when she had her first baby, knowing what I do for a living, the first thing she said to me right after she announced it, which we were delighted about, of course, was, "Mom, I know this is your thing. I don't want advice unless I ask for it." How can I not be clear about that? She
Right.
set that tone right from the beginning, lovingly. And, even if she hadn't said it lovingly, my job is to honor that. And it's very difficult for family to honor that sometimes. So, knowing what those boundaries are, and having a sense of who will honor them, and without judgment, without agenda, without trying to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one part of it. Another part of it is education. So we offer a class called Navigating the Fourth Trimester for pregnant parents. And it's about how to get through those first very vulnerable, hormone-laden weeks and months with a newborn. Everything from how to hold a baby, to how to change a baby, to how to wear a baby, how to promote your baby's calming reflex so that they can sleep a little more readily. There are no magic answers to that, but there are a lot of things we can do to help babies settle so that they can then sleep, right? How to take care of yourself so that you can bring your good enough self to your baby. I don't like to say your best self, because it's pretty rare that we bring our best self, right?
Mm-hmm.
But can you be a good enough parent, right? A good enough parent makes sure that they're doing their best, right? And we talk about that as well. So educating yourself, especially if you've never dealt with a baby before, and the kind of common thread throughout that whole class is babies are thrust into a very rude world. They go from this perfect environment where all their needs are met instantly and in an ongoing fashion. They don't have to do anything, right? And they're thrust into a world where everything is foreign. Lights, sounds, touch, right?
Temperature.
Textures,
Yes.
temperature, and gravity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Newborns have no sense of gravity. They don't know what to do with their arms and legs. So they're just helpless. And they cry because they can't cope. It's not because you're doing it wrong. And that's a really important thing for new parents to remember. Yes. It's just hard to be a baby. And so what can this help you bring some compassion to your crying baby at 3 a.m. when you're sleep deprived and you just can't get your baby to settle? It's not that you're doing it wrong. It's that they're helpless. Mm-hmm. And eventually they learn to cope and things get easier in that realm, right? It doesn't always get easier, but babies learn how to be in the world. And, but it's not like that the first month or two, sometimes even 3, right? Mm-hmm. So remembering that can help folks not blame and judge themselves, and remember that it's just hard to be a baby in the world, and I'm going to do my best to compassionately help my baby cope.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you talked about bringing your better self. I love that. Why is that important? I don't think enough people understand that how much transformation, and we don't honor it in our society. And if you haven't listened to the last episode, go back to that one, because we talked about your identity and when, and how things, your priorities can shift when you have a baby. And I don't think we honor that enough, the transformation that takes place in the birthing person, in the family, just your identity with the world, and and within your family, and to it all. So why is that important? It just kind of showing up and supporting yourself to be your better self for your kids.
As humans, we are fallible, especially when we're hormonal, sleep deprived, recovering from birth, maybe even recovering from surgery, trying to figure out how to feed our baby, trying to wrap our heads around what it takes to care for another human being who's also helpless, right? And how can we possibly be on our game all the time, if not at least sometimes, right? So can you be a good enough parent? And a good enough parent does the best that they can, reaches out for help when they need it, when they realize, I just can't do this on my own, or I need a break,
Right.
And gives themselves the grace to not know what to do, right? Because we're not going to ever have all the answers, whether our child is 1 month old or 18 years old. We're never going to have all the answers. Tuning into our intuition can help, right? Because your intuition is never stronger than when you've grown a baby and birthed a baby and are raising this baby, spending 24/7 with them, right? There's lots of advice out there. And what does my instinct tell me my baby needs or I need, right? In order to keep going. So honoring the fact that we don't have all the answers, that we're not perfect, and we're going to fail our baby sooner or later, right? Hopefully it won't be something that, involves safety or,
Right.
anything life-threatening, but, everyone fails their child sooner or later. And knowing that that's going to happen, what can we do to how can I say this? To atone with our baby for that, to make up for it. Let our child know that we're imperfect, but we're doing our best. That gives them permission to not be perfect either.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Certainly infants don't know that, but
Right.
When we can, and I feel like it starts with infancy, when we have conversations with our babies about, we're trying to do our best, that wasn't a smart thing to do. Next time I'm going to do it like this, and I'm sorry. We get comfortable with that language. And as they get older, they hear that language and they, mirror what we do and say. So letting ourselves be vulnerable and realizing that we're not always going to make the mark. In fact, we're probably going to miss it a lot. And relying on others to help can make a big difference in how we approach parenting and take a lot of pressure off of us as we, try to grapple with this huge responsibility.
And you said how I think it's so true. It's a fact. Your hormones are raging, you're not sleeping. So that right there doesn't make anyone at their best. And there's just, the amount of newness to it, especially if you haven't raised siblings or been around a lot of babies. One example that comes to my mind is how we were with my first daughter, how we were giving her a bath. Like she would scream and scream and scream. Well, she was born in January, early January. It was cold. We had her wrapped up in a blanket, but at some point we took her out of the blanket and the little towel, and we were washing her. And when we went to the pediatrician, she said, oh yeah, just use an extra towel. You put one towel down and then you have one towel on top. So you only have to really, she's not on the, anyway, it just seems so simple, but that one little thing, you would have thought like, I would have given her all the money in the world. That just made it so much less stressful. It was one less time in the day I had to hear her screaming, and it, let my body relax. It's just not, we're wired, right? You hear a baby screaming and you're like, oh my God, I have to help it. And it's just like your nerves are so on end all the time. Even if you're not in your head making a story like, I'm not doing this well, you still just don't want your kid crying, right?
Oh,
and when we kid, Yeah,
It's a
so
visceral response when our
absolutely.
babies cry.
And it's just
Um,
like you're living in that. And then, and I remember even now, my kids are 7 and 2.5, almost 3. And literally when they go to sleep is like, ah, even when I'm in the shower, I hear them yelling or crying or fighting. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like just stop. But it's like when they're asleep, I finally feel my body relax. And in those early months, you just don't realize how much, and and that's all the way they can communicate. They just literally, they just cry, but it affects our physiology and our nervous system for sure.
It definitely does. And I think it's really important to remember, the bath is a good example. Babies cry not because you're doing it wrong or it's painful, but it's weird.
Yeah.
And it's, their arms and legs are flailing and they don't know what to do with them. And it's something on their body that they've never, experienced before. When we
Hmm.
look at it that way, it's easier to come to the situation with compassion rather
Yes.
than anger or guilt or judgment about how we're doing it. Right.
Right.
And eventually they learn to love it. But it's hard to be in that headspace of eventually this is going to get better when
Yeah.
you're in it. So, coming from a place of, I need to help my baby cope with being in the world
Mm.
might be really helpful.
I think that's something, yeah, I love that you have that fourth trimester class. I think that's amazing. Just getting more education out there with, we think about, oh, the cute outfits and all getting the nursery set up, but I don't really hear people talking about like your baby literally cannot regulate their own body temperature. The hypothalamus, the thumb, like their body is just developing at this rapid rate. And in the very beginning, they need that skin to skin. They need to be with you because they need you to keep them warm and to help their body say, oh, this is what I need to do. This is where we should be at, type of thing. Like, they don't see very far. They need to eat very often. They poop even more frequently. They need so much care. And that's, straining on the parents. And we don't talk about this. It's like, oh, when are you going to bring them out
Right.
to coffee and we can see them in the little
Right.
outfits? Like, no,
Right.
I had a patient just telling me yesterday, her mother-in-law was asking, like, oh, so what'd you and the baby do today? She's like, I slept, I stayed in my bed. Like like that's enough. Like I'm just managing right now. But now she has this person asking her and she feels less than because she's not taking her baby out, at 5 weeks
Right.
postpartum. And she's like, I'm
That's a wise mama.
yeah, right.
Staying in bed. Yeah. Staying in bed is a great way to rest
Yes.
and to get to know your baby. Yeah, we have a lot of pressure around us to sort of get our act together, to your point.
Yeah.
And, that is such a misnomer. And our society doesn't really support that.
Mhm.
And another aspect of all of that is having an honest conversation with your partner, if you have one, about what they feel comfortable doing as parents. I'm talking prenatally, right?
Mhm.
What they worry about, where they feel like they might not meet the mark, and having those conversations beforehand so that we can take that into consideration in how we set up those, care for those first few weeks. And that's going to shift, of course, as we get more comfortable with our babies. But I think that it's unrealistic to expect that our partner is going to make up all the difference,
Right.
which is, of course, where postpartum support comes in very handy.
Yeah. I actually didn't even know that myself. I really, yeah, it's very, I think, an important distinction to make that postpartum doulas are not just going to show up and, hold the baby, or not just so you can take a shower, or not just show up and be your maid. There's that
Right.
working together, and there is some of that, like, what, yeah, we can talk and I can ease your mind, we can process the birth, or we could talk about whatever. But I love that you said, yeah, it's really helping you learn how to be with your baby, care for your baby, just whatever questions come up, because so many come up, like, how do I bathe my baby? I mean, I knew how to do it, but just little nuances made it so much smoother. And that really, it sounds so simple, but or maybe not significant, but it really was in those early days.
Right.
That just made such a difference to me. Um,
Yeah.
just
And
feeling successful as a mom and feeling like I can do something without her crying all the time, it just,
and
yeah.
having a postpartum doula present when you do that first bath can
Yes.
boost your confidence. You know, a lot of what we do as postpartum doulas is validate. You're doing great.
Yeah.
Right? We might make some suggestions if there's some struggles, but you know, you're doing great. This is exactly what your baby needs, and you might think about trying this.
Mm-hmm.
We also teach folks how to wear their baby, which is a game changer for most parents, because you know, those babies want to be right here.
All the
And
time.
so yeah, and so that frees up a lot of physical ability to do other things while baby is being worn. And it's a great way to go outside with your baby as well, so that they're sheltered, no one's going to touch them, and you get some fresh air, by the way. That's really important.
Absolutely.
I see a lot of new mothers who just, you know, how can I possibly go outside? You know, and even if it's cold, you can still do it, right?
Just
But
step on your back
sometimes
deck, right?
Yes, exactly. I go for walks sometimes with a new parent for the first time with their baby, you know, just to help them feel like they're supported and this is safe and, you know, nothing's going to happen. So postpartum doulas help a lot of folks get through those firsts.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. I love everything that we said. Are there any other points or things you wanted to share that we didn't touch upon? Any other advice you'd like to leave people with?
Yeah. If you think you're going to need help, you probably are. And even if you don't think you'll need help, consider it, because, you know, as you mentioned, our culture doesn't support the postpartum return. It's all about getting ready for baby and getting that nursery together. And, you know, women are kind of the forgotten part of what happens after we give birth. Don't underestimate the need for help. And, you know, it might be a good gift for someone to purchase postpartum hours. And some folks, you know, want a baby nurse where someone's just coming in and taking care of a baby. That's kind of a different means of support, but that might be what folks need. We also offer overnight postpartum support, which has become a really popular service, which is just basically involving, we make sure baby is tended to overnight, bringing baby to you to feed, or feeding baby on your behalf if that's the way you want us to do it. We can make a breakfast casserole for the morning. We can get the coffee pot on. We can do some laundry and maybe tidy up the kitchen overnight, right? We're not there to sleep and just wake up when baby needs something. You know, we're there to kind of help keep things going overnight so that you can maximize your rest. And some folks have family who are willing to do that. But if you're, you know, that gut sense is telling you there's going to be some emotional baggage coming along with this support, investing in a postpartum doula, whether it's overnight or daytime or both, or a baby nurse or a night nurse, which of course takes care of just baby, doesn't take care of the family, might be a really important investment.
Yeah.
But having that conversation with the folks who live with you about what's important to you. Some folks feel like, I want my house to be orderly during this vulnerable period. Then maybe it's time to, you know, splurge on a housekeeper for a couple of weeks, right? So talk together about where the holes are. How long is partner going to be around, right? Some partners don't have any maternity or paternity, or I should say childcare leave after baby's born. And that's a big factor, right? If there is time off, how are you going to divvy that up? Do you want to take it all in the beginning? You know, some folks who have weeks and months opt to break it up, right? When do you have to go back to work? And when does childcare have to start happening, right? So all of these things, talking about them ahead of time can help you plan for what's to come with less anxiety and less worry.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think that preparation is key. And, you know, if you live in a big city and you have no family around, to help at all, but especially if you don't really have any experience with babies, I just think a postpartum doula is the way to go to honor, to help ease your mind, get help in those early weeks, months. And then if you don't have access to a postpartum doula, take your course. That the 4th trimester course, I think would be amazing. And we all deserve it. I mean, we absolutely deserve the support. How can people learn more about you and Two Doulas and You?
So go to our website, twodoulasandYou.com. Read about our services. Folks can register for classes. They can inquire as to other services, and we will respond within 24 hours with available doulas or whatever else someone is looking for. We have virtual classes via Zoom. We have in-person classes, and we have private and group classes. So it's all there on the website. That's the place to start, and we will follow up in a timely fashion and do whatever we can to get folks the help that they need.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Colleen. I so appreciate your time. Thank you for all that you do for families and babies and sharing your knowledge with us here today. This has been incredible. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate all you do, and I'm delighted to be talking with you today.
Thank you so much. Take care.
You too.
Do you ever wish that you could learn the essentials of pelvic health from an experienced pelvic floor physical therapist at a fraction of the cost and from the comfort of your own home? This episode is sponsored by Progressive Pelvic Education, your source for online courses to expand your pelvic health knowledge and promote optimal wellness. Pelvic health is wealth, and there is a lot of essential information about our pelvic floor that isn't taught in school. Learn what to do and not to do to avoid the inconvenience and pain of pelvic floor issues in a self-paced course you can take anywhere. Visit progressivepelviceducation.com to get access today.